bring something up. As artists, and I know there's how many artists do we have here? Creators. Yeah, that's what I thought. And it's a question I'd love to talk with others about, or hear your comments as you feel like shouting, raising your hands. How does the experience of being an artist change the experience of living a life? So, I remember when I was writing early on, and I would write everything all the time, diary as a kid. And I realized at some point I was living my life to write an adventure, to document. And now, of course, that's what everybody, or a lot of people do on social media, right? You live an event to document. And I remember at one point feeling I was living in an authentic life. That my point was to tell a story or preach or get a moral out of something, like to suffer and have a lesson and share that. And so I was just wondering, in talking about being an artist at all times, you don't ever put that away. And you got your phone to record it. And your family knows you're going to do this. Whoever sleeps with you knows that you're going to wake up and document it if you have an idea. How does it affect the experience of living a life?
Well, I mean, you kind of cast a negative light a little bit in that, we're not living, we're constantly trying to document the life. I'll turn that a little bit in that my understanding that I am constantly documenting things makes me more aware at all times that I am living a life to find things that are interesting to me, understand why they're interesting to me, things that give me great concern and why they give me concern, things that give me hope and why they give me hope, finding language to be able to express those things. I think it's a beautiful and wonderful way to live, and that
it's enriched the way you live.
I think, constantly engaged with being alive because of my awareness that I am never not a writer. And I don't know if this is something that, it's not something taught, it's just the way I've always been.
Is there a difference between what I'll call real life and writing?
No, other than this is a construct. This is obviously an artifice that's kind of capturing experiences and putting them in an order that we don't really get as in real life. But other than that, I'm trying to not have much of a difference between the two. I mean, that's my hope, is when I write something that it is alive in the same way that I'm alive. That's the challenge, at least. Yeah.
And Dale, and then we're really going to go to Alan reading. How about for you? How does being an artist interfere with just living a life?
I think for me, it's much less immediate than like what Al's talking about here. When I end up writing about something, it's kicked around in my subconscious for a long time. It's very rare that I sit down with the intention to be like, oh, I'm thinking this, I'm going to document that or express it. Like I said, it's more emergent, and I have to like figure out what it's about. So I feel like, at least lately, my process is, like you, I'm a weirdo, and I spend a lot of time by myself doing this stuff. I feel like sometimes almost it can get in the way. Like, I'm like, oh, I need to make more music. And so like I'll block off time and maybe like not go on a trip on a weekend, and I'll just be sitting in the studio, and that works for a while. But eventually you're like, you need to put some stuff in the tank to get processed, to come back out. So I think I need to sometimes do more of that intentionally. And I think also, like, for me, I was kind of talking to you a little bit about this earlier, like, it's merging a little bit, but I've always felt that like my music life and my grown-up life, which I live now, were almost like alter egos. Because when I was younger, like, I started college at a traditional age, and I majored in like philosophy and architecture and graphic design, and then I dropped out because I was going to go be a rock band guitarist. And I moved across the country and didn't end up making it or anything, but then I was like, okay, I'm going to come back, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be a grown-up and pay my bills. And there was like a gap there where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And during that first time, I would say yes, probably it was more immediate, and like it was just coming straight in. And then when I kind of switched that off, I had to rediscover it. And it still kind of feels like separate, like I'm living this grown-up life, but now I've got this weird thing hiding in the background, and they're starting to merge. But yeah, it's kind of strange for me.
I think that's a great explanation of that duality of existence if you're an artist, because there is a conscious effort to document what is flowing through your brain and pass it on. And that's what culture is, right? Is that one thing I tell my students is, I don't believe in creative people. It's bullshit. We all have the exact same hard drive, unless it's been damaged, and it can be transplanted, I'm sure, someday. What is different is that the creative person works. And my proof of that is that that everybody in this room, all the great creative folks tonight, will not have any more creative dreams than your dullest neighbor has. It's a process of this hard drive, and the artist that works. And so with that, Al, would you read us the whatever portion or portions you want to?
Sure. Let's see if I can hold the mic and open my book at the same time. It's weird reading from a novel because everything is in context with everything else in the book, and you're always going to... I'm aware you'll be confused as to what's going on, and I'm not going to explain it all because that's boring, and so I'm just going to read some stuff, and you won't know everything that's going on, but just enjoy the words. And here we go. So this is from the perspective of my character, Mazzy, who's a 20-year-old woman who's in the Army, and eventually will sprout wings. In the pre-dawn darkness, I lay awake in my childhood bed, dwelling on Jesus in hell. My first Easter in the Army was during boot camp. At the beginning of the service, the chaplain had us recite a creed, part of which said that on the second day, after Jesus' crucified body was laid into the burial tomb, and the day before he rose from the dead and rolled away the rock, he descended into hell. In all my Easters at Western Valley, I'd never heard about Jesus in hell. And staring up in the darkness of my room, I imagined demons taunting Jesus, gnawing his fingers and yanking at his beard. I found the vision comforting, my problem surmountable when proportioned against Christ's burial and descent and resurrection. And come morning, I messaged my old pastor. And Pastor Lundquist agreed to meet for lunch. And at noon, we sat across from each other in a booth at Twisty's Diner. A dreary day, locals lined the diner's long counter, the other booths along the windows, mostly empty. I shared my thoughts on Jesus descending into hell. Pastor Lundquist wore a faded gray rancher's hat, and he took off his hat, sat it on the seat beside him, then softly corrected that the Bible didn't say any such thing. I tried to shrug it away, but confessed a part of me still wanted to believe it, and that it made me feel better somehow. "Oh, no, Mazzy," Pastor Lundquist said. "Don't talk like that." And then I was reticent to tell him about the cruelties yet plaguing my mind, what I'd seen and done at the fairgrounds. And the nearest I could approach my suffering was to tell him how Sergeant Nazari said the violence would end only when we killed all the people who claimed to speak for God. And the pastor grew quiet and wrapped his hands around his steaming cup of coffee. "We once had this wealthy congregant," he finally said. "He owned a place overlooking the bay in San Francisco long before the quakes and storms destroyed it all. He flew me out as kind of a treat, I suppose. He owned the penthouse in this beautiful building, marble floors, a pool on the roof. I found out how much that place was worth, and it was an outrageous number." The pastor set his fingertips to the diner's rain-streaked window. "This is all we have. This world, that view of the bay he spent so much money on, more money than I'd see in 10 lifetimes, money that'd feed our entire congregation for years, did him no better than us sitting here and looking at trucks in a muddy parking lot, and his hand flattened against the glass. We're always hoping to pass through into something better. Better house, better car. Men start wars, dreaming of what they'll pass into. But it all comes back to this. This is all we have. Trees, rocks, water, sky. Pastor Lundquist's hand dropped from the window. Unless you have heaven, I have heaven too, but I won't fight for it. No one should ever fight for heaven. Why fight for something that no one can take from you?